Hi everybody, welcome back to camp. This is session 3 as we look at what it means to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. I'm excited to get started. So I have a confession to make. I love campfire stories. And campfire stories are one of those things that just draw my heart and I listen to because I love a good story. I have another confession to make. It's not just stories at the campfire that I love. I love, and yes, feel free to laugh, I love romantic comedies. My wife and I can sit down on the couch at night and just watch a romantic comedy. My favorite is 13 Going on 30, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Why I love these romantic comedies, why I love these movies is because of the story. And these stories tell us a lot about who we are as people, and everything is nicely and neatly wrapped up, usually in about 2 hours or so. Back when I was younger, we had what's called after-school specials. They had a good moral, good everything, and it was all wrapped up. But the problem is, we also, as time has gone on, we also have reality television. How many of you have seen reality television? I know that I have. And the problem with reality television is that reality television merely reflects the culture in which we live today. And honestly, if we're not really living all that close lives of faith, it's kind of easy to slip into. It's kind of easy to get in and start acting like some of these characters. And we know that these characters are trumped up, that none of these storylines are real. But as people of faith who are looking at what real faith looks like by doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly with our God, we have to see how these relationships affect our faith, because I don't want to be the villain. I don't want to treat somebody poorly. As I follow Jesus, Jesus tells us to love one another, right? So what happens when we Christians live to honor God with our lives through our relationships? Do you ever think about that? What happens when we honor God with our relationships? Well, sometimes negative examples are really the best way to learn. Not because we want to pick up some bad habits from people, but because it allows us to hold up a mirror to our face and say, ooh, I see myself there. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that about this situation or this person. So today we're going to have a negative example. So I want you to turn in Genesis chapter 27, and we're going to examine a family who had some really, really broken relationships. This is about two brothers named Jacob and Esau and their parents, Isaac and Rebekah. Well, picking up in verse 27. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "Now that I am an old man and do not know the day of my death, now get your equipment, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau, and Isaac left for the open country to hunt some game and bring it back. But Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I overheard your father tell your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare some tasty food for me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen very carefully and do exactly what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. And then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies.' And Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, 'But Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. It would appear that I would be tricking him, and I would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing.' His mother said to him, 'My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say and go and get them for you.'" So here we have 4 people all trying to keep control. We have 4 people who are broken, who are not living quality lives the way they should. Because Isaac and Jacob were brothers. Not only were they brothers, they were twins. But they weren't perfect twins, as we read in here, that Esau was hairy and Jacob had smooth skin. They were diametrically opposed. One was on one end, he was a man's man. He was going to go out and hunt and fish and do all the things that he was supposed to do. And then you had Jacob, who likes to stay near the tent and was a little more domesticated. Not only that, we have a mother and a father who are opposed to each other as well. Because a long time ago, before this happened, when Jacob and Esau were born, there was a prophecy that God gave Rebekah. There was a promise that the older Esau would serve the younger. Now, what happened in this was Isaac tried to go around what God had said. Isaac says, Esau, I want you to come. I'm about to die. I want to make sure you, and you only, get the blessing that I have. And Esau's like, okay, this is great. I don't care what the promise God had given Mom was about. I'm going to go and I'm going to get exactly what I need. So Esau and Isaac were looking after themselves. They wanted it their way, even though it wasn't God's way. But not to be outdone, Rebekah is standing there as well. And she's overhearing her husband, who is blind, who is old, and she said, this ain't the way it's going to be. I'm going to be in charge. I have my ways. I have everything that I need because I want it my way and not your way. So she goes and she manipulates her son, Jacob. And she says, Jacob, go and get this, this, and this, and we're gonna manipulate, we're gonna trick your father, and you're gonna get the blessing and fulfill what God wanted, and we're not gonna let your brother have it. And what is Jacob's response here? Jacob's response is not, Mom, this is wrong. Mom, we shouldn't be deceiving Dad. We should go in and we should talk to him. We should honor God with our relationships. No, what does he say? Down in verse 11, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. So Jacob doesn't say, Mom, this is wrong. He says, Mom, I'm going to get caught. And if I get caught, I'm going to get a curse, and that's not good. And Rebekah wants it her way. She wants to stir the pot so much that she says, forget about it. Just do what I tell you. Go and do it. Have you ever known a pot stirrer? Have you ever known somebody who comes in and messes with people just because they can? Maybe you're the pot stirrer. How does that make you feel when somebody comes in and desires to have it just their way? I know it makes me hurt, and when I do it, in the past when I've done it, unfortunately it says a lot more about me, and it says a lot more about the person stirring the pot and getting their way than it really does about the other people involved. It's a sad situation. It hurts not only the relationship between the pot stirrer and the people, but it hurts the larger family. Can you imagine a mom lying to a dad and manipulating a son to go and steal from another son? For me, that hurts. For me, that makes me really, really, really sad, because they're not honoring God with their relationships. So what happens when Christians seek to honor God with our relationships? Well, let's move on to verse 14. So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some of the tasty food, just the way his father liked it. And then Rebekah took some of his best clothes of Esau, her older son, and she had in the house, and she put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. And she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, My father. Yes, my son, he answered. Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing. And Isaac asked his son, How did you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. So here we have Isaac and Jacob and Rebekah manipulating, deceiving, and hurting each other yet again. So Jacob goes, and he doesn't stand up for what is right, but he goes and he says, Okay, Mom, here you go. And Rebekah begins to continue to stir the pot. She goes, and she doesn't allow Jacob. She doesn't trust his cooking. She trusts the fact that she is able to take goat, something that doesn't taste like the wild game that Isaac wanted, and she thinks she is such a good cook that she's so full of herself, she says, I'm going to be able to pass this off, no problem. And then she continues to manipulate her son by getting Esau, her son, his best clothes that haven't been washed. Now keep in mind, Esau is not only married, but he's also 40 years old. So why he has clothes, his best clothes, in his parents' house, there's brokenness here as well. she goes and she manipulates Jacob, and she's almost using Jacob like a puppet of, go, manipulate your father. So Jacob goes in and he says, hey, Dad, I'm here. I've got exactly what you want. But Isaac isn't buying it. Isaac hears with his voice and he sees with his eyes, and these two things aren't working the way they're supposed to, because he says, okay, I hear Jacob, but I see Esau. What is going on? So he asks, okay, who are you? Well, I'm Esau. He says, okay, well, if I'm going to try to figure this out, rather than asking God, hey, God, help me honor this relationship, he says, how did you find it so quickly? And what does Jacob do? Jacob lies. Not only lies to his dad that the Lord your God helped me, he also manipulates God. He says, the Lord your God helped me. He lied about God, and he used God to his own advantage. He said, oh, no, because he never says the Lord our God. He keeps him at a distance. And this continues to break down the relationship, because then he's able to go and further and further and further lie to his dad. So we've all been there, and we've all seen it. Lying to get it your own way. And we see it in their brokenness. We see it in father lying to son, son lying to father, mother lying to husband. And it doesn't make it right. The fact that it's in the Bible doesn't make it right. It reveals it in us, and it gives us a sad heart because of their brokenness. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. So what happens when Christians seek to honor God with their relationships? Well, picking up down in verse 30. After Isaac finished blessing him and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. And he too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. And he said to him, my father, please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing. And his father Isaac said to him, wait a second, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn son. And Isaac trembled violently. And he said, who was it then that hunted the game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came in, and I blessed him. Indeed, he will be blessed. Ah! And when Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry, and he said, Father, bless me too. Bless me too, my father. So here we have the game coming to an end. Here we have things coming out, the truth coming out, and the question is, how will people respond? Because not only has Jacob quickly gotten out of there by such the skin of his teeth, it's almost as if Jacob goes out one door and Esau comes in the other. There's brokenness, because Esau goes and he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He uses all of this effort. Think about how long it takes to make dinner. And then he's using up a full time of his day. That Jacob steals hours from Esau's life, but he also steals a relationship between Esau and Jacob. And Jacob and Isaac and Esau have the ability to respond. They can either respond in really good ways, or they can respond in really, really negative ways. And Isaac goes and he feels the hurt and the pain because he knows he's been tricked. He knows he's been deceived. And he doesn't have anything else to give Esau. And Esau becomes violently angry. And it really breaks his relationship. So much so that he remembers back all of the past hurts that Jacob has given him. And neither of them respond well at all. Maybe you have said, maybe you have seen others say, I can never, ever, ever forgive them for this. Maybe this was because your parents divorced. Maybe because you had a friend hurt you very deeply. Maybe there's a deeper hurt that you need to talk to your cabin leader about. I mean, these things are not, these are things not to be taken lightly. But you know that as we hold on to these, you usually say a lot more about the person holding on to the things than the people who had done the hurt. Because it takes a strong person to begin to forgive. So what happens when Christians seek to honor God with their relationships? Well, what happened when Rebekah enticed and helped Jacob steal Esau's blessing? Rebekah's actions eventually led to Esau planning Jacob's murder. Verse 41 says, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And he said to himself, The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. So what happens when Christians live to honor God in our relationships? Well, we will build relationships that seek reconciliation and restoration, even in times of conflict. And this is not easy, but this is exactly what Jesus did, and this is exactly what Jesus did on the cross for me and for you. Because where Jacob and Esau failed, we can succeed through Jesus Christ. Because Isaac and Rebekah played favorites with their kids, and it affected their relationship and unity of their marriage. Because it tore their family apart. James chapter 2 verse 1 reminds us, my brothers and sisters, believers in the Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. So we cannot show favoritism ever. Christ died for everyone, not just the ones we like, even the ones we have a hard time getting along with. So we must do the same things. We must deny ourselves. We must take up our cross, and we must follow him in seeking reconciliation. And Esau wouldn't let his grudge go. A long time ago, Esau and Jacob had another conflict where Esau sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of soup. Because he wouldn't let his grudge go, it affected his relationship with Jacob. And Jesus tells us in Matthew 18, verses 15 to 18, if your brothers or sisters sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. And if they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And if they refuse to listen even to that, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, then treat them as a pagan or a tax collector. Because we are required as followers of Jesus to do exactly this. Passive aggressiveness, conflict avoidance, does not work, is not healthy, biblical, or loving. Jesus calls us to bring reconciliation. You have to, and I have to, seek out reconciliation, even when it's hard. The third thing in this broken relationship is Jacob thought only about himself, and it affected his relationship with God. Paul writes to us in Philippians 2, 1 through 3, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort in his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness or compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded and having the same being in one spirit and one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Because in relationships, especially in those that experience conflict, and let's be honest, who doesn't experience conflict? We need to be willing to put aside our worldly glasses, put on our Jesus glasses, and look at each other through the eyes of Jesus, that he loves each and every one of us. But we cannot and we will not do this unless we are fully submitted to Jesus, like we talked about, staying connected. Because Jesus is the basis of Micah 6:8. And Ephesians 4:32 tells us to be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ forgave you. So true justice is not about getting even. It's really about reconciliation and restoration, even in the hard times. So this week, I want you to love justly. Love each other justly. Seek out reconciliation. Guide each other. Lead each other in the way of Christ. All right, we love you. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to your cabin leaders. Feel free, and they can send me a message. And I love you, and we'll see you next week.